coaches, the ownership, the fan bases, the two timelines. Niners, Cowboys. What does that mean to you, 49er fans? We can talk about the Seahawks or the Seagulls, whatever you call them. We talk about the Rams. We talk about the Green Bay Packers and what's going on with Philadelphia. But to me, numero uno, when it's the Niners and Cowboys, it's just different. It's just different. It'd be like, I guess, Miami, Nebraska, maybe in a Miami, Oklahoma meeting in the Orange Bowl back in the day, where you just knew, okay, the national championship game is coming down to those two teams in the 70s and 80s and maybe early 90s. I don't know. It's just different because you're not in the same division. You are in the same conference. And to get to where you need to get to, you got to go through each other. And the Cowboys, unfortunately, they failed 2 years in a row to get through the 49ers. One on their turf, one at Levi Stadium. So what does it mean to you, Niner fans, when I say Cowboys? The Dallas Cowboys. Let's talk to David Lombardi in a second. Or actually, he's on the line right now. David Lombardi from The Athletic, of course, does a great job covering the 49ers. And David, good morning to you, man. Niners are 4-0. Cowboys are 3-1. Trying to recall, when you wrote that great piece on the Niners or Cowboys for The Athletic, was that a couple years ago? Was it the game where they basically told Eddie D not to go to it, and the Niners shocked the world with Elvis Gurr back and beat the Cowboys up?
Well, I wrote that, I think, in 2020 or 2021. It was before they met again in the playoffs. And basically one of the last lines of the piece, and this is the longest thing I've ever written, it was 6,000 words.
I remember, it took me 3 days to read it.
Yeah. Well, it took me a lot longer than 3 days to write it. So it was crazy. But at the end, I said, there's all this epic history in the 70s, 80s, and I focused on the 90s in that piece. And I said, the crazy thing is that neither the 49ers and the Cowboys have not simultaneously been in the playoffs since like 1996 or something like that, or 97, like late in the 90s. So it had been like over 20 years since both teams were simultaneously in the playoffs. And obviously the most recent time they had met was that epic game, which is the most star-studded game in NFL history, January 1995 NFC Championship. So I wrote that, and I said maybe, just maybe, in the next couple seasons, they will intersect in the playoffs again. And that happened, right? 2021, 2022, we've seen two great games as the 49ers and the Cowboys have renewed their rivalry, and the 49ers have had the upper hand.
There's just so much connective tissue between these current organizations and the history of the game. Like when Jerry came in, he was the hotshot young owner, and he was, looking up to someone like Eddie DeBartolo. Now, Jed's been in power for a minute, but he still looks up to someone who's now the seasoned guy, the old guy in the room, and Jerry Jones. McCarthy was an OC. Kyle Shanahan's the hotshot, offensive guru of the game. And Nick Bosa, Parsons, Brock Purdy, a late-round pick. So's Dak Prescott, the Ayuk CeeDee Lamb thing. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. What's your favorite storyline heading into this game?
Well, I think that Dallas is now trying to get over the San Francisco hump, right? That to me is the most compelling storyline here. You have Dallas talking a lot of trash back in 2021, saying the 49ers were the team that they wanted to play. I think Michael Parsons was saying that where he's from in Pennsylvania, the bullies get bullied, and then the 49ers turned around and bullied the Cowboys. And you have that stylistic difference still between the two teams, right? Jerry Jones is about the glitz and the glamour and the flash. I thought that the trade for Trey Lance, when he offered a 4th-round pick and nobody else was willing to offer more than a 6 or a 7, that was kind of a typical Jerry Jones move, right? I mean, I don't say this in a pejorative way. The reason he's built the Cowboys into the biggest, most valuable franchise in American sports is because he has taken huge swings over the years. But that's just the Cowboys' MO. They will overpay. They will go out and they'll do these bombastic things. Whereas the 49ers have really tried to build this workman-like vibe, right? They love to pound the football, run the football, win in the trenches. Their head coach, Kyle Shanahan, even though he's one of these offensive wonder kids, his main focus has been on the defensive line. And I think that's what makes the 49ers such a balanced team. So it's a bit of a contrast of styles in that Dallas, I've said they're kind of a front-running defense. If they're ahead, they're going to absolutely crush you because they could pin their ears back and they can go after you and they could prey on interceptions. We've seen that from Dallas already this season in 3 out of 4 games. But if you punch them in the mouth, if you're able to get that lead early against Dallas, all of a sudden they look like a whole different team. So to me, the most compelling storyline is, can Dallas dispel what I think is a very fair notion about them being a good, talented team, but a front-running team? Can they hang in there against an actual bully? Because they haven't the last couple times they played the 49ers in 2021 and 2022. So that's the big question, and that, to me, is the biggest storyline.
David Lombardi here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game does a great job covering the 49ers, a 49ers insider for The Athletic. What is it about this Dallas offense that should concern us against this 49ers defense? Of course, they gave up the 99-yard drive last week, the fake punt. But I thought overall the defense was solid. But there were some warning signs when Ambry Thomas in the secondary here. What challenges does this Dallas defense present to this Niners defense? Or Dallas offense, present to the Niners defense?
Well, funny enough, it might not be crazy to say, and people are going to think this is crazy, but I think in a few weeks, a lot of people might be coming around to this. Arizona's offense might be better than Dallas's offense.
Whoa.
So far, it has been. Dallas has been a middle-of-the-pack offense so far this year. Dak Prescott has completely changed the way that he plays. Mike McCarthy has changed the offense. They're running what they call the Texas Coast offense. They're trying to Dak threw way too many interceptions last year. Let's put it that way. He led the league at 15 picks. It was 2 picks against the 49ers. They weren't really efficient last year. So they're throwing a lot shorter, and they're playing a lot of ball control this year. And I think that does other teams a favor, because somebody like CeeDee Lamb can beat you downfield. But Dallas isn't playing that way anymore. Dak is throwing, I think it's like 5.5 air yards an attempt is the average. So it's been a middle-of-the-pack offense. I think the efficiency numbers have them exactly at 16. Tony Pollard's not Christian McCaffrey, right? He's not somebody that's going to completely blow the tops off of an opposing defense, especially a good opposing defense in an unstoppable way. If you can take care of CeeDee Lamb, then on the coverage end, then I think you can really buy your rush some time to get after Dak Prescott, and it's not the Great Wall of Dallas anymore. Tyron Smith may not even play in this game at left tackle.
Ooh.
The offensive line has taken steps back over the years. Dallas is a very defense-driven team. This defense, right now, they're top number 1 in the league. But the offense is behind where the defense is at right now, and I think the 49ers have a definite advantage on paper.
You know, that 2021 season matchup in the playoffs, Deebo Samuel was the star of that game, telling Kyle Shanahan, give me the ball, I'm going to score here. And then he goes out and absolutely does it. He looked a little tentative last week. I'm not here to say that he was injured or, second-guessing himself or any of those things. He just, to me, didn't look like he had the same explosion. What have you been noticing from him in practice the last, 10 to 15 days?
Did you ask about Deebo?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Deebo's obviously been dealing with some of the injuries. He hurt his ribs, and there was a little bit of a knee issue coming out of that game against the New York Giants. So the thing is, he didn't really practice last week. He got in there for the kind of the walkthrough speed practice on Friday, and that was enough for the 49ers to give him a couple plays. But I think that we all saw that he was more of just a decoy against the Arizona Cardinals. I do think that he's going to be a bigger part of this game plan, because you might have a freshness aspect coming into the Dallas game, since he didn't have a very heavy workload this past week. But, with Deebo, the way that he plays, it's so physical. You can't tell him to play any other way, because that's what makes him Deebo Samuel, right? He's just a punisher out in the open field. Hey, somebody asked me who's better, Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, the other day, and I said that's a completely unnecessary and unanswerable question. One of these guys is a sports car, and one of these guys is a diesel truck. And you're happy to have both of them in your garage, right? You're going to use each car for a different purpose, and that's what makes this 49ers offense so dangerous, is that you have different weapons that can do different things, and then you have Christian McCaffrey who can do everything.
Well, that's funny, because I was just about to ask you, David, and we're talking to David Lombardi here, a 49ers insider from The Athletic. If I took Christian McCaffrey away from this offense, what would it look like? Obviously, it wouldn't look like what it's done the first 4 weeks of the season, but we've been discussing earlier in the week, who's a more important player offensively, Christian McCaffrey or Brock Purdy? Now, a lot of people are going to say the quarterback's more important, but I believe they can win a couple games with Sam Darnold if McCaffrey's in the lineup. That running game looks a lot different if Christian McCaffrey's not in the lineup, David.
I think it's a question that's as old as time. People who talk about the Montana Walsh years say that there were those debates back then too. Who's more important, the quarterback or the play caller. Now you throw Christian McCaffrey into the mix. It's a three-way argument now, right?
Right.
Some people are saying, well, it's Kyle Shanahan's doing everything. And then some people are saying McCaffrey's doing everything. And then you got the Brock Purdy people. I've always been this is a team sport kind of guy. Every single component is so important. You can't discount that component. And as far as McCaffrey goes, I don't think I've seen him on his back once this season. I mean, even when he's tackled, he's the one that he tackles the tackler. Going back to Kello Witherspoon against the Rams, but every single run is finishing with this like Walter Payton type of physicality. And I mean, it's really something. And it's historic so far, right? Some of the numbers that we're seeing from Christian McCaffrey. So I asked Kyle Shanahan about it the other day because to me it seems that he's seeing the field better than last year. He's feeling the holes better. He's picking up those creases the way that he didn't when he probably didn't know the playbook as well last season. And Kyle agreed with me. He said that it was hard for him to imagine Christian McCaffrey being better than last year because he was already so good, but he is indeed better this year. And the best way I can describe it is I covered him at Stanford in 15 when he had that insane season with 3,800 all-purpose yards. It looked like a video game on easy for him. For some reason, it looks really similar to that right now, and he's not playing Pac-12 defenders anymore. He's playing NFL defenders, which to me is just jaw-dropping. So, yeah, I mean, the guy's one of the best players in football. But Brock Purdy, as of right now, is playing as one of the best quarterbacks in football, and Kyle Shanahan's calling plays as one of the best play callers in football. Yeah. So if you can have all three of those, why not? And when you do have all three of those, then your offense could be doing historic things. And right now, some of their advanced metrics are beating what the 2007 Patriots were doing. So it's wild what we're watching from the 49ers.
Yeah, I know you're talking about CMC finishing runs, and everyone's worried about usage rate and stuff, which is a fair concern. I'm worried about him getting face masked because it's the only way people can try to drag him to the ground, and he's going to get hurt because somebody's ripping on that face mask. But neither here nor there. Let's go to the defense. Bosa doesn't have the amount of sack numbers for a lot of people, but like in the offseason, hey, Javon Hargraves, you can't double everyone. One of them's got to eat. Hargrave's been way better than I anticipated, and I feel like him and Bosa, Armstead as well, like all these guys are benefiting from each other on that line. But Hargrave has been everything that they've wanted and then some. I'm so impressed with him. Are you as impressed as I am?
Well, he has as many sacks already, and we're not even a quarter away through the season, as all of the 49ers defensive tackles had combined all of last season. So, yeah.
Wow.
And consistency is what's really cool. You look at pass rush win rate for defensive tackles. He was number 2 in the league last year. He's number 2 in the league this year with exactly the same win rate. So the 49ers paid a premium because they were confident they were going to get that Philadelphia production, and they're getting exactly what Javon Hargrave was last year, which I think is really cool. That shows that they did their homework correctly. You know, we've seen free agent signings not pan out with their new team, but this is definitely panning out for the 49ers. And, you know, with this defensive line, you just have to look to see how drastically opposing offenses are changing the way they play. Anytime they play the 49ers, they're always going to an extremely quick release, assuming they can't run. Last week, there was a little bit of rushing success from the Cardinals, but again, the Cardinals still had way less rushing success against the 49ers than they did against the Cowboys. That was 105 yards versus 222 against Dallas. So the 49ers still, as Bonte said earlier, looked solid. It wasn't perfect, but I'll tell you what, they've got a really strong foundation to continue rounding this defense in the form with that defensive line, because they're scaring opposing offenses out of their normal game plan. They're dissuading them from holding onto the football. They're forcing everybody into quick release. And if you release quickly, you better get yards after the catch, right? Because otherwise you are cutting yourself off of any explosiveness. And the 49ers have given up the least yards after the catch per reception out of any team in football. So, you know, a lot of people just look at the box score and say, hey, where are the sacks outside of Hargrave? The sacks outside of Hargrave aren't coming because pressures that are forcing quicker releases, and then the linebackers are cleaning up on the back end. Warner, Greenlaw, 20 tackles total last game, and this 49ers defense is just fine right now. I do think, and I think I talked about this with you guys before the season, I don't think this defense is going to be its final product until December or January. And I think that's by design, and I think that's just the natural flow of things whenever a new defensive coordinator comes in and it tries to put his own fingerprints on the coverages on the back end. Steve Wilkes is not playing this to make adjustments that impress people on Twitter in the first quarter of the Rams game, right? He's playing this so the 49ers are the number one defense in December and in January. So that's the way I'm looking at this defense, and you can do that if you have the foundation that Javon Hargrave and Nick Bosa bring up front.
Without explaining, David, we'll get you out of here with this one. If the Niners do have to make a trade and they have to shore up something, what are you trading for? You're John Lynch, David. Is it right tackle? Is it another corner? Or is it an opposite edge rusher of Nick Bosa?
Well, let me get back to you after this week because this is the toughest test defensively the 49ers are playing so far. Arizona didn't have a great defense.
Right.
Dallas definitely does. Colton McKivitz, I think, has played two straight good games. He didn't give up the sack last week to Dennis Gardeck, but he had a clean sheet the week before. Let's see how he does when Micah Parsons is going to try to victimize him because last year Dallas was just going heavy against the right side of the 49ers line. It was a problem against Mike McGlinchey. So this is going to be a great measuring stick for Colton McKivitz. And if he passes it, then I'll be feeling good about the 49ers offensive line. I would say if this team is precariously thin anywhere outside of that, I think it's that cornerback spot. I mean, what we saw last week, and other teams are going to do this. Well, Dallas is going to put CeeDee Lamb in the slot. Last week they put Hollywood Brown in the slot because what that does is it forces Deommodore Lenoir to follow him in the slot, yanks Isaiah Oliver out of the game, and it forces Ambry Thomas into Lenoir's old outside corner spot, and then they pick on Ambry Thomas. So that to me still is a weakness at cornerback. So, if a trade would be possible or if a free agent signing would be possible, I think the 49ers are going to hammer that.
All right, David. Very good insight there. We'll be reading your work. We'll look for the injury report Wednesday or later on today when the Niners hit the practice field, getting ready for the Dallas Cowboys Sunday at Levi Stadium. David, keep up the great work, man. Thanks for always joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Anytime. David Lombardi from The Athletic.